Move over, Gavin Newsom. There's a new frontrunner in town, and her name is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. AOC, now the first place contender for Democrats in 2028 when you take a look at the betting odds. For essentially the entire time that these prediction sites have been following the 2028 election race, which is basically going back to the 2024 election, there has been a clear frontrunner for the Democrats, which is Gavin Newsom. He essentially the entire time has been leading, sometimes by a little, sometimes by a lot. I'll put up the picture for you now to show the graph over time. And as you can see, there were periods where he was up by a good deal, getting as high as 36, 37% odds. But ever since March or so, we'll call it, those numbers have been trickling down, and we started to see movement from these other candidates who started to close the gap. Now he doesn't really have a lead anymore, because Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has just been able to barely edge him out, and now what we're seeing is a much more contested field. So to read the odds, we have AOC at 17%, Gavin Newsom also at 17%. Before, AOC was at 18%. She must be slightly higher by a fraction of a percentage point because she's still in that first place position. So it's AOC 1, Gavin Newsom 2 at the time I took this screenshot and recorded this. We also have Jon Ossoff at third place, 14%. Then we get to Kamala Harris at 9.5%. Mark Kelly, which I was surprised by, at 5.7%. Pete Buttigieg, 5.5%. Josh Shapiro, 4.6%. And the list actually goes on and on and on. There are more names on this list that I'm not even going to get to today, but there are people like Pritzker and Wes Moore who could potentially be contenders as well, who are far down on the list right now. So we see the AOC surge. That's probably the headline from all of this. What is causing it? Was it that Jonathan Karl interview, for example, because she did a recent interview where she was asked about 2028, and she notably didn't rule it out. We covered it here on the show. She didn't say one way or another whether she would run, but she didn't say no. So the fact that she didn't say no makes a lot of people think, oh, maybe she should run. She would be a viable candidate. Also, she decided to go public with her decision to freeze her eggs, which I think may help her with women voters who want to make it a priority to, of course, normalize women's health and reproductive issues. So those are things that have put AOC in the news, and for the right reasons. And I think she also would be this breath of fresh air for the party. She would become the youngest president ever at age 39. Putting up the graph again, we get to Gavin Newsom in second place, and notice how his numbers are down from where they were before. They're certainly down from where they were 6 months ago. They're actually, though, still in line with where they were about a year ago. So he's still right up there, tied for first, essentially. So there's no doubt that he's still in this mix. And then we get into perhaps the most fascinating result, I would say, out of all of this, and I think maybe even more fascinating than the AOC surge, because even before this little surge, AOC was still in contention here. Jon Ossoff, who went from just being at like a few percentage points to now being in third place with 14% of the vote. And I think it's pretty clear why this is happening. I think people are starting to recognize his skill as a politician because he's just such an effective speaker and campaigner and fundraiser, but also he is dominating his current re-election bid. He's the incumbent senator, of course, representing Georgia, and he has this re-election bid against the Republican Mike Collins. There's a poll out having him up by 9 percentage points. Mind you, he's a Democrat in Georgia, and he's winning by 9 in the state. So that is really impressive, and I think there are a lot of Democrats who are taking a look at that and saying maybe we should run him as the presidential nominee in 28 because he could potentially get us Georgia. He could potentially get us maybe other places like North Carolina more easily. Maybe even a Texas would be in play. So no doubt there are Democrats thinking about Jon Ossoff because of all of that. Then fourth place, we get to Kamala Harris, who is still holding her own. She has 9.5%. So, of course, Kamala has the name recognition, and she was the most recent Democratic nominee. A lot of Democratic voters maybe feel that she didn't get a fair shake at it the last time because she didn't have the opportunity to run a full campaign. It was cut short. It was only a few months. So there are people who are going to support her undoubtedly because of that. And there's also the reality that she's crushing it when it comes to the traditional polls. When you take a look at the actual polling and not these betting odds, she's actually getting something like 30% of the vote and sometimes winning by like 2-1 over who's ever coming in second place. So hearing that, she actually is a serious contender. Now, of course, there are some people who say polls this far out, they're not really good for anything because people aren't thinking about the 2028 election. We haven't even had the midterms after all. So people are saying Kamala Harris because that's the person that they can think of. So there is that aspect to it too, where, you know, the people who are putting their money down with these betting odds, they're actually assessing who are the most popular politicians in the country right now, who's likely to get in the race versus not get in the race. So very different assessments, very different tools. And then we can keep going down the list here. We see Mark Kelly, who is, like I said, surprisingly at 5.7%. I did not see that coming. Then we have Pete Buttigieg, who used to be higher, I think, on this list. And he has really just like fallen off slowly but surely. I suppose he's just not as relevant as he used to be, honestly, because he was Biden's transportation secretary, but that's not the most high profile gig. And now with Trump being president, he just hasn't been as present in the media, I suppose. And then we get to Josh Shapiro, who was on the short list of contenders for the vice presidency back in 2024. So he was naturally in the conversation for 2028, but he's fallen off a little bit, it looks like, and he's now at 4.6%. So I think that the big headline here is that Gavin Newsom is no longer the clear number one, and we're likely going to have a contested primary. For once, as Democrats, no one's going to be coronated. Hopefully we can have an honest, fair shake at it, and we'll see who comes out on top. But if there's anything that we can definitely say from all of this, it's that we're probably not going to know who the nominee is anytime soon. It's probably going to be well after the debates and the early states, and maybe even after Super Tuesday, because this is a crowded field and they're all bunched up together. And we have AOC, we have Newsom, we have Ossoff, we have Kamala, we have maybe contenders that we're not even considering right now on this short list. So it's all getting started very, very soon. First, we have the midterms, of course, but it's clear that it's really anyone's game for Democrats right now.
Summer is better when good food doesn't require planning, and that is why our sponsor, Wild Grain, delivers sourdough breads, seasonal pastries, and French butter. From small independent bakeries straight to your door, everything bakes from frozen in 25 minutes or less. I love Wild Grain's slow-churned French butter on sourdough. Rich, lightly salty, it is a great snack. Easy upgrade for breakfasts or casual summer dinners with friends. Wild Grain is using simple, recognizable ingredients. They've got a slow fermentation process. You can customize your box with classic, gluten-free, vegan, and protein options. So if you're looking for an easy way to enjoy bakery-quality bread at home, give Wild Grain a try. Over 40,000 five-star reviews, named USA Today's best food subscription box 3 years in a row, and their croissants are still winning awards. Go to wildgrain.com/Pakman to get $30 off your first box plus free croissants for life. The link is in the description.